Hello, and welcome back to Sharing a Chapter a Day. This is Do, Ra, me, and today I will be reading Chapter 79 of Engagement in Peril by Dara Odoe Suk. Chapter 79 is titled Ashley's Sincere Gift of Remembrance. February 4th, 1999 was my day of departure from that horrendous state of mind that I was angry and dying over, and was the very day I left for good from that Marine Corps base, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and out of the armed services. The U.S. government finally approved the paperwork and request by my psychologist to send me home on a psychological discharge. I had received the good news about my honorable discharge several nights before I left my last military command for good, so I packed and loaded almost everything I had in my worldly possession at the time into my compact four-door sedan and prepared myself to check out on my assigned discharge date then. My last several nights on base wasn't so easy on my mind and spiritual well-being. All I could think about was how it would be like to be home once again, and what I would do with my life from then on. I was saddened, depressed, and overwhelmed from all that had happened to me these past several months. But I was also relieved and glad that I would be home soon at the same time. I was glad that all the bullshit had and would finally come to an end then. No more taking orders from the power that be, and no more pissing my life away under psychological and medical holdings. I was ready to start anew. So I had thought then. I often overdosed on my prescribed medication then, trying to loosen my thoughts and escape the anxiety of reality then. I was trying to off myself, of course. Something exciting and memorable brought a warm feeling and cheered up my lonesome heart that night before I was due to depart from home. While I was writing in my journal and my first personal computer, and listening to music that I had installed in my music desktop, listening to soft songs that I had downloaded from a CD or two that I had purchased earlier, and around 1900 hours or so that night, that brisk evening, I was visited by an angel. A lovely angel indeed. Well, my angel was Ashley. My angel Ashley had come. She had come by to say hello and to hang out with me. She had walked several long miles from her work duty and her station to spend time with me, little old me, little Dara. And I was really glad and fortunate that she had come by that night. Ashley was a godsend that night. She helped ease me, and she helped me to not waste myself that evening. Marine Corps Lance Corporal Ashley was in her working greens then, and oh so lovely in her winter wears. At the sight of her, I quickly invited her in, and we kissed and laughed and hugged our greetings and hellos then. I was feeling clingy that evening, and Ashley knew it right off the bat. I dashed quickly away from her for the moment to lower the sound of the soft music that was playing on my personal computer, and afterward Ashley asked me what I, what was the matter with me. So I sat her down on my bed while facing her on my chair, while sitting face to face at her on my room's chair with the soft music radiating from afar. I explained and told. I told and explained to Ashley of my situation then, and that I had to leave tomorrow and never to return, and how much I would miss spending time with her and Julie, and how much I would cherish the friendship that we three had formed and shared during these wonderful several weeks together that we had been acquaintance. Ashley had mixed feelings about what she had heard from me then. She felt sorry for me and also was glad for me at the same time that I would be home, that I would be able to return home soon. It's what I had wanted after all, and she was right about that. It was really what I really wanted. She too would miss me, she explained. We had built a good friendship, a good, friendly sexual relationship then, and she would have to hate to give all that up all of a sudden. I smiled and kissed her softly from that comment. She was so delightful then. She knew just what to say and knew what to do just to put me at ease. Ashley was a good-natured, kind-hearted person who cared for me, and we spent the rest of the night together, talking, holding, embracing, and making love. We were spending our last night together then, and we were making the best of what we had. And what we had then was each other, and that very little time that we had left. We had our last romance in arms then. While softly and firmly holding my hand, Ashley stood up and dragged me to my door. She locked the bedroom door, deadbolt lock, with her free hand, made a turnabout, and firmly faced me. There we were, face to face, eyes to eyes, captured in a frozen moment, a frozen Kodak moment, mesmerized in each other's presence and attached to each other like a set of handcuffs. She leaned down forward, with both of her hands gently cupping my motionless face. She pulled me closer toward her and kissed me softly on the mouth and lips. I returned the soft kisses, and one kiss led to another. Soft kisses led to deeper kisses, and then led further into touching and groping upon each other's arm, body, and parts. I put my arms around her firm body and pulled her closer to me. Our body collided in an instant against one another, and we stood there motionless, holding each other tightly and endlessly. While hugging, we continued to passionately tongue and French each other. With the few breaths we took away from each other's face, I asked Ashley if this is what she wanted. She smilingly replied, "Yes, yes, it's your going away present." She coyly smiled as her eye flamed up. She also stated, "Consider it as a goodbye gift of remembrance from one friend to another. Sweet, sweet Marine Corps Medical Petty Officer Dara," she had exclaimed. I giggled and was overjoyed. I now have someone I can really call a friend, not just a one-night stand, but a fuck buddy to whom I can talk to and share my feelings and experience with then. Damn, I was lucky then, so I had thought. I felt really touched that night, and emotionally and physically touched. Never would I thought this could happen to me, and never could have thought that I would lose Ashley and Julie by tomorrow afternoon once I leave for good from this damn command. Before we start about, before we start, before we went about kissing and following each other, my music player was set at one of my favorite songs, so I dashed off to quickly set it and hold it on repeat. The song that I often listened to then during my lonely nights and hardship during my stint in the coal of North Carolina then. The memorable song was "The Best Mistake I've Ever Made" by Joanna Wang, a talented Taiwanese singer-songwriter who was born in Taipei and raised in Los Angeles, California, where various genres of music influenced her musical talent. The best mistake I've ever made. This lovely song is about losing oneself in a lover's arm, embraces and indulges, and not holding back but giving in to their sexual desire and urges. I was losing myself that night with Ashley, and I couldn't but help myself to give in to her then. We continued to tongue fuck each other, there beside my barrack door, clutching in each other's arm while sucking out the essence from one another. I began unbuttoning her uniform blouse from top to bottom, slowly releasing one black oval button at a time, slowly exposing her firm, cream-tan cleavage that was nicely held by a pair of lime lace Victoria's Secret brassiere where her nipple hardened and erected with the slightest touch. I slowly drawn my face down onto her neck, nibbling at her exposed, raised veins and taking small bites at pieces of flesh that stood in the way as I traveled down to her healthy, bountiful bosom. Her arms tightened upon my body while she drove her fingernail deeper into the flesh upon my back while I went about arousing her from her neck down. She too was getting in the mood of having sexual relation with me that night. We both eagerly aroused each other then, arousing each other in ways we knew how. Ashley and I were in deep, deep, deep trouble then. We weren't going to let go of each other until we were done and over with. We both knew what we wanted. We both knew that we were going all out tonight. And we knew all out. We knew we were through. And we threw out all our inhibition and readied ourselves for a fantastic night of lovemaking. Once upon her firm and natural large breast, I slowly dragged my eager tongue across and in between the exposed cleavage, tasting the lace-covered sweet flesh. I bobbed my head up and down in her hills and valleys, while my face was suffocating in her ample bosom. My hands patiently moved toward her firm abdomen and up toward her chest to the front release hook that held her luscious breasts up beside each other. With one flick of the snap with my left index finger, the the bra strap snapped apart in different direction, catapulting her juicy milkmaid against my awaiting face and mouth. Like a rabid beast, I ravaged upon her bosom, biting and squeezing at whatever was available. Ashley began to moan and groan as I heartily nipped at and sucked upon her nipples and breast. She yanked off my t-shirt out of my waist belt and away from my body and chucked it across the room, launching it atop a dresser next to the bathroom. I ripped away her blouse from her clinging arms, dropped it by our feet and picked her up by the waist, carried her and threw her upon my mattress several feet away. We went at it like wild hyenas, fighting and festering upon each other's flesh, growling and whimpering as though we were cats and dogs as we bite and nibble at each other's exposed flesh, slightly slashing and bruising each other in the process. I thrust her shoulder down against a firm military-issue mattress and pounced upon her bosom once more like a famished infant yearning for milk and sustenance. While heavily groping and suckling upon her large bosom, Ashley slowly tightened and released her body at various intervals while I yanked and ate away at her delicious breasts. She would yank on my ear, clawed my shoulders, and moaned joyously from the oral pleasure she was receiving. With her firm leg wrapped around my lower back and waist, she squeezed out the devilish urges bottled inside of me, causing me to expose my fangs, and I moaned joyously in pain while I bit into her. I was ready for another all-out sexcapade. And tonight, no rules, and anything goes. It's my last night with Ashley, and I was going to make the best of it. I was going to eat her up and shag her rotten. Ashley knew what she wanted from me then, and I knew what I wanted from Ashley then as well. I was going to fuck her till she couldn't take it no more. I was going to rip open and turn her inside out that amazing night. Damn, Dara, watch your language. Language, please. Watch your mouth, you son of a bitch. Say that you're going to make love to her until she can't take it no more. Don't be so deliberate and blunt about your sex fest with sweet Ashley. Come on now. She was really good to you then, as I reminded my bastardly self of what was once good and peaceful. After I finished ravaging at her delicious bosom, I slowly moved my tongues and teeth down her abdomen, causing her to giggle and squirm at every nibble. I quickly removed her uniform trouser and lace panty as I moved lower and lower toward her warm caverns. Once there, I secretly inspected her freshly shaved lawn. She had shaved her pubic hair into a landing strip, with the arrow pointing down toward her vagina. A slight giggle was uttered from my engulfed throat after seeing that, and then went on with my amusement with her refined, firm body then. With several fingers from my left hand, I felt and pressed upon her warm, wet, throbbing snatch. I pinched at one of her labia with my index finger and thumb, and slowly pulled it away from her body. And again her firm body tightened and aroused. With my index and thumb finger, I spread open her labia and buried my face inside Ashley's. I mouthed, sucked, and licked away at her inside until she was completely dry from my overwhelming oral fixation upon her lady parts. Eating away at it as though it was my last meal on earth and munching away at it as one of my favorite sushi dishes, which was actually was. I love eating pussy. Ashley moaned and groaned, telling me that she really loved it then what I did was doing to her, and her legs tightened around my head. Like a vice grip, her legs put much pressure around my skull and head, and at the time choked me somewhat. My penis was now filled with blood, and I had been fully erect. My shaft bobbed up and down on its own, waiting for its turn to be sucked and gulped by Ashley's warm, moist mouth. Now with her legs and thighs tightly clutched around my head, where my face was buried deep inside her, Ashley squeezed, pushed, and pulled me down deeper and deeper into her, telling me to keep sucking her until she climaxed. Not wanting to be the one to disappoint, I sucked, gulped, and sucked until she moaned in pleasurable agony while she squeezed and pulled tightly at her large breast. And in one screaming yell, she thrust her arms up and away from her bruised bosom, and she squirted and cum into my mouth and all over my awaiting, amusing face. Ashley now breathed heavily, trying to catch her breath. I too breathed heavily, trying to get some air into my lung because of my face was buried deep inside her warm, pink, throbbing orifice for several long minutes without air. We were both somewhat exhausted, but were happy. For more to come. After catching and taking some fresh air into our lungs, we both giggled and sinisterly smiled at one another and went about our next phase of the fuckfest. We were about to create that steamy, lustful night. After orally pleasuring Ashley until she was satisfied, I now wanted my turn of being sucked, and she heartily agreed. I stood myself up, and she quickly removed herself from the stained bed that she had left behind, and in a flash, Ashley was on her knees. She knelt in front of me. With her warm right hand, she began to stroke me up and down, while her left hand cusped and squeezed at my testicle. Her hand motioned quickly as she gently squeezed and stroked me then. She was really getting me all wild up. More blood was rushing down to the shaft of my penis, causing the large vein atop it to harden and enlarge. She began to wrap her warm, delicious tongue around my shaft, licking it left and right and all around as though it was a popsicle ice cream stick. She then looked up at me, and once again our eyes met. I smiled, and she devilishly smirked back and began to take my penis into her warm, savoring mouth. With her tongue wrapped around my shaft, she bobbed her head up and down on my throbbing penis, slightly teething it on the way while going up and down on me. She started off slow and then began to quicken her stride and bob while sucking down my entire shaft into her mouth and throat then. My body began to tighten and tingle at every suck and blow. She was giving me the blowjob of a lifetime, and the best that I had ever felt. Even better than that of Tilly's and Aline had given me months earlier. I began to thrust my hips back and forth at and into her face while she continued to devour my piece down her throat. Moments at a time she would look up at me in reassurance that she was enjoying her task at hand, and perhaps making sure that I too was enjoying what she was giving to me then. Of course I was. While standing there, I pushed and thrust myself harder at and into her mouth, pulling and yanking her head back and forth into the front of my hips. Several times she gagged from the rough thrust that I had inflicted, but like a true trooper, with no hesitation, Ashley continued to suck down on me until I was completely emptied. My body tightened and harder until I couldn't take it anymore, and with a deep moan from within, I unloaded my ever sinful, holy white minions into her warm, awaiting mouth, which she gladly swallowed and gulped down them wholly. After unloading upon and into her, I dropped down on my knees beside her, where we continued to kiss and tongue each other on the drenched, stained, tiled government floor. We took several minutes to regain some of our used energy then, so that we may continue on with the sex fest of making each other happy that night. And I was loving every second of what we were doing then to each other on that warm, lustful winter night. Ashley was really bringing out the devil in me then. She was bringing out the very sexual demon that I often had to hide from my past lovers and fuck friends. I was going to eat and tear her up that night, and she was going to allow me to do that to her. How kind was she then? We smiled and grinned at one another as we continued to make out on the floor. We then moved on to the bed, where we continued to massage each other provocatively, arousing our sexual desire and hunger once again. Once our bodies were ready for more oral pleasuring, we began to 69 each other. While I ate away at her neatly trimmed rug and sucking and nibbling at her battered clitoris, she devoured my erect rod deeply down her throat. With every suction and slurping, we both moaned and groaned in pleasuring bliss. We continued with our oral fixation for about 8 more minutes until once again We both climax and come in and all over each other's mouth and face. Afterward, we took a short break, allowing our body to relax and regain some of our wasted energy. In silence, we lay there, snuggling in each other's arm for about 20 minutes or so, stealing soft kisses at various intervals and looking into each other's sexually glazed eyes with appropriate, when appropriate, of course. Lying there, I couldn't believe that I was doing this. It's been so wonderful having met Ashley, and now she's given me the time and pleasure of my life, which hasn't been matched to this very day. Not only is she so beautiful physically, she was wonderfully beautiful deep within. At that moment, then, I could imagine myself in her arms forever. I hoped this moment would never end. I was falling in love with Ashley then. But like I said and mentioned earlier, all good things must come to an end. No matter how hard or determined you are to prevent it from ending, it will eventually perish because nature will take its course, and where she will rape and reap you of your once in a lifetime chance of happiness and enjoyment with that one person that wasn't meant to be. But enough of my whining against Mother Nature and those that are beyond my own control. Let's get back to the last night that Ashley and I shared and spent sinfully, molesting, battering, ripping, and savoring away at each other's steam, tattered flesh. After 20 minutes of rest or so, Ashley and I regained most of our consumed energy. We continued to kiss and mouth each other deeply. My hands once again began to caress her ample bosom, while she quickly got aroused and her hand began to stroke me slowly, arousing me as well. With my heart on ready to enter Ashley's moist, juicy oyster, I got atop her and positioned myself into place for the missionary mounting. I continued to suck upon her plentiful bosom, gently teething her nipple, arousing and quivering her firm, luscious body, which in turn further hardened my erection. I slowly removed my hands away from her delicious soaked breasts and led them toward her firm legs, where I guided my hand toward her knees, where I guided my hands up toward her knees, and she was willing to assist me with spreading her legs away from one another, readying her for the full, blossoming flower missionary position then. With firm grips under the back of her knees, I lifted and spread her legs 180 degrees or more apart, and as I looked down at her moist, throbbing, dripping snatch, her lubricated labia slowly and meticulously opened up, exposing her sweet, sweet, juicy, sloppy entranceway. Our eyes made contact once again, causing us to agreeably smile while we prepared ourselves of what was to come. We were going to fuck each other to death that night, or at the very least, come close to near death then. She slowly moved her left hand toward her moist pussy. With her index finger, she began to arouse her clitoris, pressing down and rubbing on it back and forth, up and down against it while her eyes rolled back and forth, and with her other free hand, she grasped my ready penis and guided it toward her warm opening. She then roughly rubbed and stroked my penis up and down against her wet, warm pussy then, touching my shaft against her clitoris, then against her labia majora, and then her labia minora before guiding me into her throbbing, vaginal opening and allowing me to launch my God-given catapult deep into, and inside of her. Once in her vagina, I slowly moved back and forth, slowly pushing my shaft deeper and deeper into her warm orifice. While I slowly thrust my shaft into her, she tightened her vaginal opening and around my erect penis, prolonging and adding some resistance to the entrance, making the intercourse more pleasurable for both parties involved. With my arms still spreading her legs apart, I continued to thrust and pounce upon into her faster and faster. And with every pounding entrances, she moaned and waited and wailed for more. Her hands clutched tightly to the mattress sheets, pulling out the military creases from the bed that I had made that morning in pleasurable agony and enjoyable pain. I pounded on her spread eagle body, ripping away at her wet pussy while she oozed creamy sweet white nectar that attached itself upon my shaft while I punched in and pulled out of her time after times again. After 10 minutes of savagely pounding on top of her, we switched position. While we moved ourselves to our next position, we stole quick soft kisses upon each other's dirty lips before I mounted her from behind in the frog position. She once again sucked down my shaft, sucking down her own creamy juice that clung upon my penis, and quickly after the suck, I turned her over on her hands and knees atop of the floor mat nearby where I mounted her from behind. I continued to pound into her firm ass. I continued to pound into her from behind then. The front of my clutched heart and body collided against her. The front of my clutched heart and body collided against her firm buttock, setting off loud slapping sound that echoed throughout my dorm room and perhaps notifying my neighbors of what was going on. I pounded and pounded in and out of her until I unloaded my dreaded, white, gooey minion inside of her, which left dripping stain upon her labia, buttock, and thigh as I slowly pulled out. She quickly turned around as I pulled out and straight for my shaft. She took it into her mouth, sucking and blowing as hard as she could, swallowing the juice that I had left to offer her pain that painfully flowed and oozed out of me and into her gulping mouth and down her thirsty throat. Ashley knew damn well what she was doing then that night. It was like she had come over to my place to give me this memorable moment. It was like she was made for me then. Ashley was made for me then. Ashley was a godsend that night for my lonesome heart. Once she was done sucking me dry, we continued with our sinful love-making back on the mattress. She laid on her abdomen on the bed, and with her buttock raised upon exposing her tight anus while her feet were spread apart and anchored to the floor, she frantically urges me to go into her anally. With no hesitation, I quickly inserted my firm rod into her oozing rectum. I slowly plunged myself deep inside of her while she screamed, moaned, and groaned. I began to pull back and forth and push deeper inside of her, at first slowly, and once she was lubricated enough, I sped up my thrust, causing her to moan louder and louder while she clutched my sheet tightly and bit into a nearby pillow. I boned into Ashley heavily and heavenly that night, bouncing in and out of her until once again I unloaded my demonic, ghostly minion in and all over her anus and buttock. I ripped at her and into her asshole, stretching it like it had never been stretched before. Her once pink anus was now reddish in color, and several trickle of blood oozed from her ruptured butthole then. I was quite harsh upon Ashley's body that night, and she allowed me to. Ashley had no complaints then. She knew I was leaving and it was her delightful gift for me then. She was allowing me to do this to her as I please. She was allowing me to do to her as I please. She was carefree and allowed me to be the devil that I had always been. I was truly my demon self then that night with Ashley and her body. Exhausted, accompanied with joyous pain and smile, I laid atop of her from her behind. She too was tired from the fuck mania. Both of us, in some joyful pain, we laid there. So we took some time to re-energize once again ourselves before continuing our sinful love-making that night. Lying there with our warm, tired, soaked body were touching, we giggled and smiled about that moment. I sincerely whispered softly against her warm ears, "I'm having a wonderful time being able to share this moment with you, Ashley. And you are the best that I had ever had, Ashley." She smiled back while rolling over. While facing me and with a warm smile, she told me that was nice of me to say and stated, "I'm glad and happy too that we had this time to spend together, Dara. And I'm glad that I got to meet you several weeks back. It must have been fate that brought us together, Dara. And yes, you have been the best that I ever had as well," she had exclaimed. With an appreciative smirk and smile, I replied, "Must have been. Fate or not, I want to thank you for this moment, and the past moments that we have shared. Ashley. I don't know where I would be if I hadn't met you. And Julie that night, of course, in the hospital mess hall. You know that you were both godsend to me that night. You had saved me from myself." She glowingly smiled at me again, giving me a facial expression that tells me that that was nice of me to say, and that she really appreciated the comment that I had made. Our eyes locked once again, and we kissed deeply for several more minutes. While our tongue played tug of war in each other's mouth, our hands clutched at one another. Her soft left hand in my rough right, and her right hand tightly holding my overworked left hand. Our fingers locked, and we pulled each other closer together. We were passionately kissed there atop the hard cushioned bed, bare and buck naked to the vast world outside. Ashley and I had become one then. I held her tightly in my arms that wonderful night of love making thing. I held her tightly in my arms that wonderful night of love making, thinking that I didn't want to ever let her go, lying there atop of her with my face buried in her healthy bosom and my arms wrapped around her slender, warm body, tightly squeezing her nakedness into mine. She gently rubbed and stroked me up and down against my bare back with her soft, warm palm hands, reassuring me that at this very moment it's all about me and her. It's all about us. It was only the two of us then in this lonesome world. I felt so comfortable there in her arms, consumed and overwhelmed with her warmth and gentle pleasantry, as she had given me a cozy place to rest my tiresome body, and her large, firm, warm bosom snugly held me in her place, just like a perfect set of flesh pillows. I smiled and sucked myself deeper into her flesh. We continued to deeply, passionately kiss as we lay there, lost in time and space. Lost in translation, we were face to face, smiling and breathing slowly, eyeing each other as though we were the last two human beings on the face of this unruly earth. I deeply inhaled the sweet, heated scent that was radiating from her warm pores, while watching her beautiful, bountiful chest rise up and down. I thought about the events that led me to being with Ashley, and I felt fortunate and blessed to have met this beautiful person. We lay there for several more minutes, lost in each other's eyes and simply lost in the moment. Once our worn-out body had fully recovered, we once again had rough, animalistic sex. Once again I began by squeezing and rubbing Ashley's luscious boobs so that she might get aroused. With her eyes focused on mine, she bites her lower lips in response to my advances, and moved her right hand toward my limp penis that she began to rub and massage. After several seconds of touching my manhood with her warm, moisturizing, callous hand, my stiffness returned, and she had awakened the giant beast once again, and he was now ready to get back to work. That type of work that we both really enjoyed doing to each other then. Once my penis was aroused, I went down on her breast hard with my mouth. I bit into her sweet, sticky, warm flesh, yanking on it left and right, causing her to howl in agonizing bliss. She pulled up and back on my ear. Tingling sensation rushed quickly to my burning ears, causing me to ravish upon her bosom harder. A a sharp bite from my jagged teeth caused a slight cut into her firm cleavage, while her firm, warm body moved and quivered as I sucked, pulled, and ripped, and pried on her beautiful, luscious bosom, arousing and radiating her for more re-entry into her. After several minutes of foreplay and such, we were ready to begin our next fuck phase. But before any insertion was to take place, she once again went down on me. This time she went down on me rougher and harder, snapping her mouth atop my penis as she went down on it. With her teeth slightly embedded against around my firm shaft, she pushed in and pulled back her head, arousing and motivating me to fuck face her harder and harder as I can. I thought she was going to bite my penis off then with her firm command and demand of my face fucking her then. Without hesitation, I grabbed the back of her head with both hands and pushed it in and pulled it out while she gargled, gagged, and choked on my rated penis. I thrust the front of my body into her face, faster and faster, smacking my pelvic into her beautiful face. Faster and faster I went about with my thrusting, at that time hitting the back of her throat, gagging her as much as I could with my heavy pounding down her throat, and once again I come in her mouth and all over her face, bosom, and bended legs and thighs then. She looked up at me with her beautiful green eyes that glowed with radiating passion as we readied ourselves for the next phase. She laid on her back upon the concrete floor, and with her right index finger beckoned me to come upon her. I hurriedly got to my knees in front of her spread eagle thighs. I positioned myself closer and closer to her, with her left with her left leg wedged between my thighs and her right leg held up with my left hands. I inserted my hardened penis into her warm, moist pussy then. I slowly thrust my firm meat into her glowing skin gloves, pulling and pushing as she smiled, synchronized in devilish pleasure. I sped up my pace, pounding against her lubricated oyster, where now both my arms held her right legs tightly as she squirmed and fidgeted from below. We both moaned and groaned from the pleasurable pain that we were inflicting and giving to one another that late winter night. Pounding and pounding, I went about against her visited snatch. Harder and harder, I inflicted pleasurable pain in and upon her. My body began to shake uncontrollably from the constant thrusting and repetition. I was stuck on automatic and repeat, and I just kept going and going about and pounding into and out of Ashley then. With no care in the goddamn forsaken world, we both moaned and yelled at the top of our lungs, roaring and screaming from the pleasurable pains. With constant brute force, we both were waking up the dead then with our enjoyable, blissful pain. After several long minutes of sexually pleasuring each other, we both climaxed again. At about the same time, she locked her arms and legs as she moaned in pleasurable agony. Once again, I ejaculated inside of her and atop of her. After pulling out my beaten rod from the depth of her scorching, pleasurable, soggy abyss, I unloaded upon her several ounces of warm, glistering, gooey life that splashed upon her face and chest. We were now both dead tired, exhausted to the bone, and too tired to move. We both lay there atop the cold concrete floor, stuck together like two combined, mixed, and meshed Play-Doh. Ashley, beautiful, tiresome body, warm body, attached to my innate flesh in everlasting silence. We held hands and faced each other. Naked and smiling, we gazed in each other's eye while we both moved into a fetus position. Lying on one side of our body, we locked our hands and joined our knees together, whispering sweet nothing to each other. Our eyes and facial expression said it all. We both knew that what we were feeling then, and that's all that mattered at the moment. It was us, and it was we. We may only have tonight, but until the morning light, she was mine. Ashley was all mine, and I love her. We lay there on the moist, cold concrete floor for several more minutes until we regained enough energy to raise ourselves onto the bed. It was now 2300 hours, and we had been having wild sex for about 4 hours now. Our withered bodies were too exhausted to go on any further. We felt it was time to get rest and get some sleep. With yearning thoughts, I selfishly asked Ashley if she could stay the rest of the night with me, since it was my last night in the service and all, and I didn't want to be alone. With a sincere, warm smile, she heartily agreed. We dragged our limp body onto the mattress, still sweating from the exhaustion. While holding hands, we moved onto the mattress. Thank you for listening. This is the end of chapter 79. Be on the lookout for chapter 80, titled Last Night in Arms and the Regrettable Goodbyes. This is Do, Ra, me, and I'll see you later. Thank you.